59. All right. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Alrighty, come on. Do it. Well, hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of the Laughter for All podcast. I am comedian Nazareth, and the Laughter for All has podcast has been going on for over a year. And until the pandemic, we're just bringing comedians who just make you laugh, and we talk about life and how comedians' lives. But since the pandemic, we started to find ways to help you out. So we started bringing people like last week we had a couple that talks about conflicts in marriage. We had people talk about how to do Zoom and how to, improve. Phil Cook was talking about your, social media and how to increase your influence. We had Josh McDowell talk about how to share your faith with people. And we had different, Dr. Mark, who was talking about nutritions and different places. Well, today I'm bringing a friend of mine. He's a comedian. He's
Me.
also a creative director, creative. He's a writer. He writes scripts. He teaches script writing at Biola University. And I'm going to officially introduce him. He's known for being both clean and wildly creative. Jim Hope headlines clubs and colleges across the country, made over 60 television appearances, performing on NBC, ABC, Fox, Comedy Central, and E&E. Additionally, he has been a frequent contributor to KABC Talk Radio in Los Angeles and was the comedy field correspondent on NBC's Later. Jim is also accomplished TV writer and producer, excelling in that capacity for NBC's Later, Fox's Titus, and ABC's George Lopez. And Jim's work can currently be seen on Nickelodeon. He's done A Dog with a Blog and different other, Planet Sheen. And he's just an amazing man. And right now he teaches script writing at Christian universities like Biola and the other two
Tucson
I don't
Pacific,
want to mention. Yeah, I can't
APU.
mention. Yeah. So welcome, man. Jim Hope, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Hello. Hi, everybody. Yes. Hello.
You, it's
Um,
funny. I've known you for many, many years,
yeah.
and I met you before I saw you on stage, and you were just this quiet person who's very nice and sweet and serious, and then one time you went on stage, and the first you thing you did, you jumped off the stage into the people in the first row and you started screaming like a dinosaur.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
That
you
was a
made
long
them
time ago.
repeat after you. It was so
Yeah.
funny.
That was my old days. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not that shy and retiring. I just, when I meet people, I'm quiet and I don't want to, there could be a lot of me. I don't need people to, you get to a certain age and you realize there's a lot of me. So when I first meet people and stuff, or when I talk to people, I just let them not have too much of me. And then I go on stage and then there's a lot of me. So
There's a
that's,
lot of you, yeah.
there's a whole
Now,
lot of, you know.
now you have the different and you've done different things from producing to creative directing to writing to comedy and stuff. If you can only pick one, if you say, you know what, God looks down at you and said, "Hey, Jim, I want you to do just one thing," what would it be?
Well, he actually specifically said not to do one thing, so I don't know what the answer in that is. I keep on getting things thrown my direction that are things that I really love, and I love teaching tremendously. I mean, it's been I fell into it. It was one of those things I'd wanted to do my whole life, and then my grandfather's a professor at Pepperdine and all those other things. So for me, it was like, oh, that'd be a great life. But I was a stand-up, and I was like, okay, I'm going to be a stand. And then the stand-up became writing, and I fell into that. It just led into that, and then that was terrific. And then, really honestly, my writing and my producing informs my teaching. So I kind of need to do both. It's all part of the same thing. If I don't stay current, I'm not really going to be as useful for the kids because my approach is kind of to let them know and to see what's actually happening right now in the business. And so I kind of have to be right now in the business for my side to work because that's kind of the angle that I come from. Although there's some fantastic teachers at many universities who teach the same subject matter who aren't working like I work, but they have tremendous insights and also, so it's just, that's my way of teaching. That's my way of reaching the kids. So, honestly, I have a lot of energy. So if I I think I'd drive my wife crazy if I didn't have a bunch of different things I was doing all the time, because I'd just be around the house just, coming up with ridiculous things to do with the carrots, let's plant the carrots outside, honey. It's like, why? They were already grown, but I would still do it because it's like there's something to be done. So there's
Are
just
you ADD?
no,
Were
no,
you? No.
no. I have an IQ of 190. So when you have that kind of an IQ, you just kind of, no, I'm just kidding. I made that up. Yeah, I'm probably ADD. I was never diagnosed, but my brain moves fairly quickly, but I don't really believe, I think that a lot of people are diagnosed for things that aren't really a problem. It's just, they want you to sit still and be a good little soldier and, do the work set in front of you. And not everybody's built for that. There's a lot of kids out there that, kind of get pegged, particularly boys, but girls too, get pegged with kind of a label. And, as Kierkegaard said, if you label me, you negate me. I mean, it's like saying, which I learned from watching Wayne's World. It's not like I'm reading, but it's one of those things. It's like, it really is true. When you start putting a label on something, you go, well, now I can dismiss you and not see you as a full person. I don't have to deal with you as a human being anymore. I can just kind of say that you have this thing, and that's why your brain moves so fast. You have a disorder. Well, not necessarily. And maybe my brain sketches across a lot of different things, but it serves me well. And, you just find the thing that works for you. And if your brain doesn't sketch across and it's able to focus on a particular task, terrific, good for you. I mean, God made us with a tremendous amount of variety, and we have a lot of different tasks in front of us. So, however what I try to teach people is, you learn your gift, and then you lean into it, whatever that thing is, you take the thing that you are and you lean into that. And then everything else you kind of shore up with craft. So you got gift and you got craft. Craft is what you learn about the stuff that you don't naturally do, but what you naturally do, lean into that, learn what it is and lean. And that's kind of my big thing. So
that's very important for people listening, going, well, I can't relate to writers and producers and directors, but in whatever profession you are, you lean into that. Let me just, two questions from what you mentioned. Number one, about labeling, and which is really important because right now we're living in a time like, I get labeled, you're a Christian, therefore,
mhm,
you don't count anymore. You're this, you're
mhm.
conservative, you're that. Oh, you're Middle Eastern, you're Muslim, you're a terrorist, you're this, you're that, you don't count. So that labeling is happening a lot in our
Yeah.
culture. And was that part of Hollywood? Like when like when don't you have to stereotype to write movies or to write scripts and to write shows?
I think it's actually the opposite. I think that's actually devastated script writing, is that we start looking at people as not individuals, and we just kind of see them as categories of people, and that doesn't really work. I mean, you need to write stories about people. You need to write stories about specific individuals, because that's what we really relate to. Bertolt Brecht, who wrote Caucasian Chalk Circle, and really kind of from a Marxist perspective, his stuff is terrible. I mean, people go, oh, Brecht, but he's awful. I mean, because it isn't dealing with individuals, it's dealing with categories of human. Well, there are no categories of human. I mean, Marx kind of broke us down to bourgeoisie and proletariat as if somehow that's telling you something about yourself. And it doesn't. The truth is, I've known way too many people in my life to ever decide that somebody is something because of the color of their skin or because of their religion or because of where they're from. Actually, religion, you can tell something about some people, but that's because that's a decision. But in terms of, things that you don't decide, like that you're male or female, or that you're tall, or that you're short, or that you're heavy, or that you're, well, I mean, I can't tell you really anything about physical characteristics that actually define you, because I know too, you define the physical characteristic. If you happen to be black, your blackness doesn't define you. You define blackness. Now, of course, there's a black experience in America, and that is a very big part of defining the person if certain things occur in a way. I mean, it can define, but even then, you break out. You move to the direction that you choose to. I mean, we have options, we have choices, and some people would say, well, some people, because of their choices, rather the things that happen to them, they don't have any choice. I've never met one. I mean, it's this silly notion. These are hypothetical people. And you say, well, what if a person was like this and this and this? They don't have any choice. I've never met one of those people. I've never once met a person who didn't have a choice as to who they were. If you've met one, please introduce them, because I know the people that make those objections aren't those people. I know those people know that they have choice and that they can make. So when you come up with these ideas, again, you're creating, this human that doesn't exist. And in writing, you have to create humans that do exist, because they have to live for everybody, and they have to be something. They have to be specific. If you don't write specifically, you're not writing.
Wow. Now, speaking of that, and you're so every human, you cannot label anyone. You do a joke, which is a part of your real life. You said, "Hey, my wife is African American. I don't approve of that either,"
Yeah,
which is
yeah. It's like
hilarious.
my wife is black. I know. I don't approve either. You know, people are like, "What's
But
that like?" You know, so it's the same as being married to a white woman, except I'm afraid of her.
but in reality, now you guys
Right.
been married how many years?
29
28,
years, so I'm not
29
afraid.
years. So
Yeah, no,
29 years, that was the year probably 1993,
91. My daughter was born
91.
93. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
91. Yeah,
91. What was that like? I mean, you got married to an African American.
yeah.
Was there any, like, pushback from families, from people, from
Well, no, no.
church?
My family. I mean, I grew up I grew up in the barrio for a long time. My father was there, my mom, but we were white people. But there were plenty. There were white people there too. I mean, we were around people of all colors. It was never an issue in our family. I mean, my brother's also. My brother actually married. He was with his girlfriend at the time, and she's also black. So we're
Where's
the brothers.
home? I want to know,
We
like,
lived
grew
in
up in the barrio. Which barrio
we
were
grew
you
up
in?
in East LA, Northeast LA, not East LA. We lived in North because people go East LA, and it's like, well, you were in El Sereno. That's Northeast LA. So we grew up in Northeast LA, Highland Park. Highland Park's actually gentrified now, but back in the time there were gangs and stuff, but mostly lovely people everywhere. And that's what you do. Is like I didn't go well. People who are this color are in a gang because I knew too many people who were this color who were not. And
That's
so
true.
people kind of they as long as you're set off in an enclave, you don't really see what other people are, and so you don't really get it. But when you actually interact with a lot of people, you can't really. It's hard to be a racist. And what I found is actually that there's two kinds of racism nowadays. There's malevolent racism where people just go, well, that person is a certain color, so they're more criminal. They're bad, they're evil. And then there's the malignant racism, which is, well, those people are that color, so they're not really bright enough to take care of themselves, and they need us. And that's the side that we're seeing a lot nowadays is the white savior kind of coming in and going, well, we're going to fix it for the black folks who can't think for themselves. Well, there are no black people who can't think for themselves. That's a racist notion itself. You're trying to save a group of people that don't need to be saved. They're fine.
Wow.
They can
I've
take
never
care of themselves.
heard that. I've
Well,
never
that's because
heard
I
that.
just made it up. My brain's
That's
always
why I love the way you made it up, because could not make it up myself. And I'm like you, 190 IQ. So
yeah, no,
we're
of
on the
course.
same level.
Maybe mine might be 2,000 right now, and I think you're about 3,000. You got me about 1,000 points. How'd you do it?
That's funny. So, let's dig more into that, because I've never heard that. Speak to that in relation to the Black Lives Matter issue and the protest and all that's going on right now,
Well,
or was going on.
yeah, there's a lot going on, and you know what? It's impossible to unpack in a single sentence. I mean, there are people of tremendous goodwill trying to make a change, and then there are people not of goodwill who are trying to make a different and bad change, and they're trying to get power. But there are other people who are saying, look, there's been something going on in this country for 400 years. Yeah, sure. I mean, my country's been here since 1580. So my family rather has been here since 1580. So maybe, we were there before, and maybe we're the problem. No, actually not. My I have two great grandfathers who fought for the Union, and they were in the South. So they actually changed. They actually said no, we're not. They rejected it. So I'm very proud of that. But we have a history of not only slavery, but then subsequent to slavery and Reconstruction, then Jim Crow coming out of Reconstruction, which really didn't
Right.
reconstruct much of anything. Kind of reconstructed the old South structure, but without the word slavery, but functionally kind of creating slaves in that time, and at least a second class, an underclass that wasn't allowed to get traction. So we have this history, although for the last 60 years, almost 56 years roughly, since 64, the Voting Rights Act, and in the 50s, we were already making changes. Thurgood Marshall and all these other people, Brown versus Board of Education that overturned Plessy versus Ferguson, which was an abomination of 52 years prior. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Yes, anyway, the numbers are wrong. 54 and 96, 1896, but I'll do the math later. 58 years. But that the turn was happening, the change was happening because of Christians. Honestly, Christians couldn't abide slavery. Ultimately, I mean, Harriet Beecher Stowe wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin, which started. She was the little woman who started this great big war, as Abraham Lincoln said, with a book that said to people, "This is an untenable circumstance." And the Quakers pretty much functionally were the Underground Railroad. They said, we cannot do this. And Christian people have fought against it the entire time. William Wilberforce in Britain, or England rather, changed the world, in getting rid of, and there's still slavery in the world. I mean, we've got this, the largest country in the world has a population of about 1.3 billion people who are in forced servitude in large part. And they have large groups of people who are making your shoes and your computers who are, being forced to work. They're slaves. So it hasn't been abolished, but in the West, we've done what we gotten a big way to that. But being Black in America for a long time, read Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. I mean, you see just a portrait of how the marginalization has occurred. So you understand what's going on. However, things have gotten better, and they're going to continue to get better. And separating ourselves and yelling at each other and saying things that don't make any sense, like defund the police, which makes no sense at all. I mean, 80% of Black people in Black communities don't want the police to be defunded. They need the police. And then it's mostly criminals yelling for it, really, honestly. People who
or teenagers who don't know what they're talking about.
So I can commit more crimes. Or people who have kind of a Marxist agenda because they don't understand that socialism really isn't an economic system, it's a political system. And they're lazy. I mean, the socialists are all people who are functionally like Marx, or don't want to really work. I mean, Marx lived off his bourgeois wife because he didn't really want to have a job. Because the thing about socialists, if you really dig down deep into it, is they don't want to work because it's hard. And so I mean, that's where it comes to ultimately, is that it's the Marxist notion is, I mean, look, it's not true that they don't want to write. Hitler was a socialist and he wanted to work, but I mean, there's other kinds, but giving, I don't know why anyone would say, let's give all the power to the government. The government's evil. They keep on doing these horrible things. Give them all the money. It's like, why would you do that? You already know that but government's corrupt. They're always trying to destroy us. Give them everything. It's like, why? That's just a bad calculation. And so it's like, Bernie said, we're going to give you 50 billion good paying green jobs. Where are they coming from? I don't, you just made it up. He makes up numbers. So anyway, that's
it's funny. Yesterday I was in Wisconsin. No, Sunday night, and I did a joke about how our our generation, our kids, like they want socialism. And I said, where were you? You know what? When you were little, remember when I gave you $1, give your sister $1, and you got mad because you did more work than her? I said, where's socialism back then? I said, remember, you want the government to take over? You want to go to Disneyland and stand at the Mad Hatter? Have you ever been to the DMV lines? You want to stand at the Mad Hatter and get a ride in 2 weeks from now? Like they're gonna give you a coupon, come back in 2 weeks, and so stuff like that. It's silly that sometimes people don't. And then I was saying, like I was upset at the protesters because. I lived in third world countries, and I've seen how, if you ever see people protest in Pakistan and Yemen and stuff, these guys don't have any money, but they have brand new flags and tires. They actually make like a filled, like mannequin of whoever they hate, and then they burn it, and they have signs made by Vistaprint, and they're spelled correctly. You're all right. I'm looking on TV. I'm like, there's homeless people who can do better than this. And is this, can you spell right? Is this defend or defund? Is that a U or is that an E? But it's true. You're right. What you were saying. It's just out of ignorance. A lot of people are pushing for this whole.
It is.
Marxism.
It is, but I try to see it from every side potentially, because I think that's our job in large part. And so I understand the other side of it. And when I say lazy people, that's actually too much of a generalization. What it is also is that we have a system that's right now. There are people who are jobbing the system. They've gamed the system. They've worked it out so that they get all the money, and they keep on doing that. I mean, $8 trillion was given behind our backs in 2008 and 2009, 2010 to the banks. And they took that money from us, from Americans, and there's a cadre of people who are enriching a small group of people, and the government is right now focused on that. So I understand why people are saying, well, we need it to be fairer, because there are in a capitalist system, and we don't have one currently. A capitalist system, it's supposed to be a lot of competition. There's supposed to be competition between a lot of groups. You shouldn't have multinational corporations. But in order to compete against China and compete against the EU, we made something called too big to fail. And we created what's functionally a neo-mercantilist system, where you have a large the government rather identifies its wealth in the wealth of its large corporations, its large companies. When China owns 70% of every company, not 70% of the companies, but 70% of every large company, they are a corporation. So we're competing with them. So we sponsor our corporations and we give them all the stuff. And the same thing in the EU. And so it creates this situation in which a very small group of people accumulates a tremendous amount of wealth. But that's not capitalism. Capitalism needs to be restored. We need to get rid of the idea. We need to make it, because here's the thing. Capitalism takes all the people that are the greediest, right? The most power hungry, the most money hungry, and it makes them compete with each other. So they have to be nice. When you take that away and you put all the money into, you make a small group of people with all that, and they don't have to compete, right? They don't have all these different companies fighting each other. Then they all, again, you accrete all the worst people into one group. That's what happens with a socialist nation, is that all the worst people who want the power and want the money, they go into government. And that's what you see in China, and that's what you saw in the Soviet Union, and that's what you see at every totalitarian socialist nation, which ultimately any nation that gets away from godly values will become totalitarian, because you have to control people some way. And if people don't control themselves from within, if they don't discipline themselves from within, they'll have to be disciplined from without.
Do you sometimes get so angry at what's going on or something, and then to where you go write a character or a sitcom or something about it, or that's not how they are? What motivates you to write, Jim?
Well, money. I do I do it for money.
Of course.
Yeah, that's what motivates me. I like money. And no, I do it. I actually really like doing kids TV. I kind of fell into that years ago after I was done with George Lopez. I kind of got this job. Steve Odekirk allowed me to kind of do this one thing, a spinoff from Jimmy Neutron, Planet Sheen, which was really fun. And I really like the kids market. I like talking to kids. I think it's an important thing. And I like writing clean. I think that writing, the other stuff, sex jokes are easy. I mean, let's just be honest. It's super easy to write a sex joke. I mean, it's just not hard. It's hacky. I mean, to me, it's like, okay. I mean, I could sit there and I could write 10 pages right now of sex jokes, not hard. But write a clean joke that everybody likes and everybody gets. Well, it's not easy. And so there's a big challenge to that. So that motivates me. I really like the idea of that. I like making people laugh. But I don't look at the world, the things we're talking about, the cultural things we're talking about, I like to give people a little bit of a respite from that. I'm saying it now because we're talking about it, but, and because I'm trying to be even handed, I'm trying to see everybody's perspective, because, it's not true that there's one thing that's right. I mean, we just don't, well, theologically, of course, there is.
Theologically, there is.
Theologically, of course, but human beings, as we know from 1 Corinthians 13:12, we see through the glass darkly. I mean, we spiritual things and even our own things. We don't see everything completely. Now, someday I will know even as I am known, but right now I don't. And there's a lot of things. It's like that ignoramus et ignorabimus, which is I do not know and I will not know. Now, I disagree with that fully. I will know someday, but I'm not going to know here. I can't store enough here. So I think one of the things that I like about comedy is, and working, is that, we're all looking for connection, and we all want a little bit of a respite from our days and our difficulties. Everybody, lives are hard, and they're often full of sorrow. And so where we can relieve that, and where we can say, hey, I understand you, care about you, and here's a little fun stuff for you. I think that's valuable. And I think talking to kids and helping them, inculcate them with values that are culturally affirming, that kind of keep us together as a society, is terrific. I believe in unity, and all those. I think the union needs to be preserved, but it needs to be preserved correctly. I mean, Carl Schurz said, "My country, when right, to be kept right; when wrong, to be put right." And so, it's okay to look and say, you're not anti-American if you say, well, this doesn't work, but this does work, and this doesn't work, so let's fix it. But you are anti-American if you say, let's tear all the institutions down, let's get rid of America, let's change it completely, and we'll just start anew with my idea of what's good.
Right. Now you wrote for George Lopez show, and that wasn't really clean. I mean, it was. No, okay.
It-
Now, what was Lopez like? You dealing with him as another
oh,
comedian, or
well, George is legitimately one of the best comedy writers, stand-up writers I've ever met. I mean, the first time,
really?
yes, his stand-up was just spotless. The first time I saw him, he wasn't even a headliner, I don't think yet, but I'd seen him. It was right in the beginning of my career in the late 80s. He probably was headlining. I know he was headlining someplace because how could you
Right.
have him do that? But it was, he didn't even know who I was. I was in the back at this club in Ventura. And my friend who was headlining was a friend of his, and he came out to hang out. And he did like 10 minutes just to kind of hang out in a spot. And it was spotless. It was just beautiful. I mean,
Wow.
the writing, it was so
I did
clean.
I did not know
Oh
that
yeah, no, no,
about
he
him.
was really, really good. And working with him, he's a technician. I mean, the guy knows, he knows where the joke is. He knows how to work it. Now, I mean, he's gotten into some political bags and kind of done that direction. That's his choice, and it works for the audience that he's built for himself. I think that's a very clever way to approach your career, because I think, I mean, he knows what he's doing that way. He really understands comedy in a way that most people, they don't have, that. He's just got that, and very distinctive voice. So I mean, yeah, our show at times, it did sex jokes and all those other things. I mean, that's how shows often are on network, which is kind of really like why I love kids TV. But I mean, that's it itself. I mean, but George himself is a really, really talented comic. Yeah.
How you mentioned earlier, like when you do kids, you write for kids shows and stuff. You're pushing for values and unity and stuff. But what do you write? Where you're? I mean, first of all, how many books a week do you read?
I don't have time. I don't read a lot of books. I do a lot of thinking. But yeah,
Really, you do a lot of thinking
yeah. I mean,
because you sounded like you read a lot,
well,
just
when
the
I
way
read,
the
it
knowledge.
sticks. I have a little thing about sticking. It's kind of gets. I have a
How?
little bit of a sticky
How?
brain.
I have
Yeah,
a problem
well,
with that because I read a lot.
reading in a different
Not
language. You're reading a different language than you were born with, so it's a different thing. No, it's different. It's a different bent, and I did a lot of studying when I was younger. I mean, I still read, but it's like I read. I have this thing. I mean, when I read somebody's book, I kind of get what they're saying about 7, 8 pages in, and then I'll scan it and go, okay, yeah, I was right. And if it's a nonfiction thing, and that's kind of the thing. I get their ideas and I go, okay, and I mull it over. And most people don't hide what they're trying to say in their books. When you're writing, I mean, it's not like, I'm going to keep this back for the next 700 pages. Oh, you won't see it for another 1,000 pages. No, I mean, if they've got a point to make, it's going to be in page 6, 3, 2. I was reading a Hume a while back, and on a paragraph 14 is when he says, hey, look, yeah, I
you're
mean, I'm
fired.
paraphrasing Hume, but he says, hey, look, we have to kind of pretend that human beings can understand everything, or we can't do real science. And then he just moves on and says, okay, we'll just pretend that. Kind of his way of addressing Barclay and Locke, who both kind of said, well, we believe that we can understand truth in life because we know that God made it accessible to us, which is the foundation of empiricism. But Hume said, well, I don't want to have God in here, so I'm just going to say, let's just accept that we know that we can understand reality. And that was early. I mean, most of them say their stuff pretty early, even
That's
philosophy.
interesting.
Yeah.
Now, when you write, if you have the option, say, hey, I can only write either kids TV, I can write scripts, or for a sitcom or for a film movie, what would you choose?
Well, I don't really do too many movies. I think they're great. I'm more of a short form guy. I like short. I like writing short. Although I can do the long form, it's just I get bored the longer it is. So I mean, to me, writing kids shows, sitcoms for kids, or animated shows for kids, which I've done both, or writing sitcoms for adults or animated shows for adults, or that's functionally the same to me, because I write the same kind of. I can be a little wilder with the adults in terms of well, not entire. I mean, in terms of wild imaginational, imaginational. I'll make up a word,
Yeah.
leaps, but that's not actually true either. It just depends. I like it all. I can't. It's like choosing which of your children you like best. Well, actually, I like my daughter best, but still, it's I
You
only
only
have
have
one,
one.
so it's easy to pick. It's easy for me to say, well, which child do you like best? Well, my daughter. Yeah, I only have the one, but yeah, so it's yeah, but yeah, I like I just like the writing of the process. I mean, it's fun, and I really like being in a writer's room with a bunch of people laughing and making jokes and doing room bits and kind of goofing off, and then breaking a story that works. And there's a lot of work to it. You can be there a long time, but it's pretty gratifying when you do it. But it's not easy, and it's a different kind of job. I mean, I think a lot of people think oh, TV writer, well, you must it's just the work keeps coming. Well, it doesn't.
Right.
Always on the hustle. I'm always working. I've usually got about 6, 7, 8 different projects I'm doing at any one time, and I've got to keep them all kind of in the air and see which one is actually going to work for me. And it's possible that none of them will, and then I have to find something else that I'm doing. So
How
that's
do you
that's
how do you deal with it? Like I'm a comedian, and
Mhm.
yeah, like you, but
Yeah,
you're in writing, and
yeah,
sometimes we had seasons where we're so busy, we got all these projects, we're
yeah,
doing great, and then there's seasons where nothing is going on. And
yeah.
I'm like,
It's
I'm a hustler too. I keep hustling. I don't wait, sit and wait for the phone to. How do you how do you deal with life in that stage?
it's a hard yeah, it's a very interesting thing. I tell my wife, talk to my wife about this. There's different ways of approaching this kind of creative lifestyle where you don't have a regular gig, where the gigs are just kind of what you create. You can go look at it as you're a prospector, or you can look at it as you're a fisherman, or you can look at it as a farmer. The farmer is planting many, many rows with many different kinds of crops. And they're just tending them and constantly working them and bringing in water and finding another row and planting some more crops and hoping that the sun shines correctly. But you're still, even if the sun doesn't shine, you bring in some lights and you're constantly like working it. You're working your land. It's like uh, uh, those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies will have their fill of poverty. And so you work your land, and that's the farmer side. The next way to approach these kinds of creative lives is, and it's a little less good, is being a fisherman. So that you're out on a lake or an ocean, and you kind of find spots, and you keep your net out there, and you trawl, and you're kind of looking, and there's fish somewhere, but you don't know where they are. But you're looking, and you're working a big space, working a lot of territory, and that's really exhausting, and that really is less likely to succeed. The last one, the least successful thing, and unfortunately so many people go this, is the prospector who buys one little patch of land and just hopes that a nugget pops up. That they just wait for that water to come, and they're just looking for that. They're panning for gold in that one little spot. Some people succeed that way, very few. You kind of, to me, you have to diversify. You have to be the farmer. You have to work those rows and plant a bunch of different crops like you do. I mean, the podcast, the stand up, the special. I mean, all that you do is you're a farmer. And that's how you approach this career, and that's how I try to approach it too. And that's why teaching for me is part of that. I love teaching, and teach at Chapman also. I teach at Chapman and Azusa Pacific and Biola. Azusa Pacific, I'm now the director of screenwriting over there, and that they've been very kind to allow me to do that. But and Biola, I'm going in as I'm adjuncting there, but that'll I'll have more classes next semester, which is terrific. And they're doing some amazing stuff, and I've really been very grateful to be able to be involved with all these programs. They're terrific, and the people in them are terrific. So, but that's part of my thing. Then I also have several things I'm creating, and if I've created and dealing with some friends who are producers and things, and we're putting those out there, and seeing what we can make, and I have a bunch of friends who, if one of my things that I'm with them on that, it doesn't work, they'll do another thing with me that, something. So I kind of,
That's a good relationship when
yeah,
people
yeah,
give you
yeah.
different
I
chances,
mean,
right?
that
And now
that's,
you mentioned something earlier on when we started. You said I have to keep on writing. I have to keep on working. So when I teach, I'm relevant to what's going on right now.
mhm.
Now, what is the difference between right now, what's going on right now in the writing in Hollywood, than when you were just fully a writer?
Well, it's well, there's two, well, it's always changing. What people like changes. What people are interested in seeing changes. The lingo changes. It's what's current. I mean, for a while there, people were talking about Quibi, which is the 11-minute shorts that they thought people were going to watch on their phones while they're in line for something. It didn't seem to have caught hold, partly because you can do TikTok and watch 90 seconds or 60 seconds in on the line in a line on the phone, and
Right.
people weren't as invested in the narrative. It still may work out, but that's one thing they were talking about, and they're always trying to find a new thing, and the new, you have to be apprised of what's going on in gaming, and you have to be apprised of what's going on the web and in streaming, and the whole world of streaming has changed everything because it's shorter form entertainment. You have shorter seasons. It's quicker in, quicker out. You're not always on the set. If you're a writer, you're writing for a little bit and then you're going on to the next thing. And you need to kind of understand that so you can, and even the structure of comedy and the way that what people find funny has changed. I mean, if you look at the Michael Schur's work, I mean, his oeuvre and the people that work with him, it's not just him, but it's those people. It's like The Good
Who was
Place.
that? Michael who?
He did he was on The Office, and then Parks and Rec is his. Brooklyn Nine-Nine is his. The Good Place is his. It's a very, I don't want to say sweet because that can sound demeaning. It's a found family, and it's where people accept each other's weird, and where the selfish people are really the problem in a group, and where in large part your problem comes from outside your group, and everybody kind of forms a community. And I think it's lovely. I mean, the stories he tells, the way his shows, and not just him, but those guys, they have a really interesting angle, and it's the Parks and Rec is it's an endearing show with very sweet people in it, and people who like each other, and I think people are looking for that kind of connection, and for a long time sitcoms were very much like, you're fat and here's a joke about that, and you got a big head and here's a joke about that. We did those on Lopez. They were hilarious. But you're this and you're that, and here's a label for you, which we did do, and here's the joke about that. Whereas I think Michael Schur and a lot of the stuff that's happening now is very personal. It's very directed. It's very specific about who that person is. For example, the show, and this is not a show I'm recommending to your audience. There's a show called Fleabag. It went through two seasons. It's very blue, and it goes very much into the sexual areas that doesn't need to probably, but maybe does because that's the show. But I will use that as an example just because it's a very personal story, and it's a very, very directed at a very specific person. And that's the market. I think we can do that with anything if you understand who people are and you really dig deep and find the human story, which helps us with connection and all those other things. It's less label, by and large. And I didn't mean to label the show by saying it's profane, but it is fair. I mean, it's not for your audience. But it is well done for what it does. And what it does is it says, this is a human being with these feelings, and this is her walk through life. Watch her. And she's a terrific actress and a terrific writer. And, you will watch her if you watch that show. Again, don't watch it. If you have a Christian bent, it's not really for you.
Now I want to watch it. No, I'm just kidding.
It's not, yeah.
But how do you read people? How do you, Jim Hope? How do you read people so you go, maybe one day I'll write a character on that person or something?
I don't really. That's a really interesting question. I mean, if I was writing for somebody who already had a comic voice, I would listen to them a lot, and I would try to figure out what their life was and what would be interesting to them and interesting for them to delve into, and the kind of stories that would come out of that. And that's really what I would do for that person. And then what you do is you build a show. If you're going to build a show around an individual, you find that person and you find the things that are unique about them and unique about their story, and you kind of fold that into them, and kind of not fold it, but you kind of wrap them up, and you kind of see what it is without extracting them from it. Then you understand what the salient qualities are that you're going to really be able to get story from, and you kind of create that character that is them and that they play. And then you put people around them who are obstacles or who are helpers. And, because that's how you build a show. You have to look at who's going to generate story, who's going to, does the premise of your show generate story? Do the people generate story? Where does all that come from? And so that's how I do that. I kind of just see how when I start trying to create a show or work on a show with somebody who's already created the show and they want me to come help them kind of help, mold it into something. That's what I'm looking for, is the voice of the lead, the protagonist, and seeing how everything can move forward with them. And, some people do an amazing job with that. And, that's what that is. Yeah.
It's funny. I know a couple of years ago you called me and said, Ned, I need to do a sitcom about your life. Now, is sitcom still actually, is there people still a market for sitcoms?
That's a really interesting question. It's like, I yes, yeah, I'm sure, it's not dead, the idea of it is not dead, but it has changed. It's mostly single camera now. And, it's not usually, there's actually, it's not true entirely. CBS still does plenty of multicams, which is in front of a live audience. The difference between single cam and multicam is this. A multicam is usually in front of a live audience or on a sound stage, at least on sets that are kind of set. And they would be done in front of a crowd, even if they're not done in front of a crowd. Everyone will block and shoot them. But it's done that way, and it's done like a play almost, where you're kind of almost playing to the crowd, and it's more theatrical. The jokes are bigger. The jokes are more blunt. Their jokes are often, as joke lines are usually funnier. They sit by themselves. They come off the page funny. There's some character development. There are character laughs to be had. I think Raymond did a fantastic job of having character laughs with jokes. They did a tremendous job of melding both of those things together. But CBS has a lot of big joke, like Big Bang Theory is an example of that. It's like jokes. Here's your characters. Characters are funny. We have strong characters. We know who they are. They have strong voices. You get great actors, and they make it funny, along with the writing being funny. And so that's the one side. The other side is the single cam, which is subtler, more. It's more theatrical. The film, it's not. There's no laugh track. There's no laughter. Usually in the thing, the multicam has the laughter. The single cam, not so much the laughter. There's reactors on the set. There's people who are reacting. The camera does some of the reactions. Like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, the camera is very much active as giving reactions. Like it comes in, pushes in, it pulls out, for it almost as if it's the audience. But that single cam thing, it's lovely for now. It's what people seem to like now, that they want to buy now. It's more personal, and it is more about the characters. It's about the people, and harder to get into. It's harder to build an audience because it isn't just big jokes. You can't just always walk in and catch up, whereas a multicam, right? You can come in on a multicam and see episode 52 and you're in. You know what the show is. The characters are very, Chuck Lorre does, honestly, does a fantastic job of giving you a premise that you just get immediately. It's like you just go, boom, that's the show. Oh, okay. And you walk in, Lothario and his uptight brother are raising the uptight brother's son. It's like very easy to get all the jokes. It's very easy to see what that is. And so that's that part of the success. It's like the Two Broke Girls, not his show, but it's very easy to see what that show is. Single cam, you kind of have to be invested in the world. You kind of learn the world, and then you learn the characters. And then it gets hilarious. Now, Brooklyn Nine-Nine is a nice hybrid because Brooklyn Nine-Nine has huge jokes, I think. Very funny on the page. And really, and Parks and Rec was hilarious too. But nice little character moments, a lot of character moments. So it's a nice version.
My son asked me to ask you a question, and it says, do you have to live the story in order to justify writing it?
No, not
You
at all.
don't.
No, we're human beings. I know that that's a big thing nowadays, is that you have to, that people have to be the thing that they're writing, but that's negating our humanity. It's saying, that functionally, if you're white, you can only write white people. And if you're white male, you can only write white men. And then who can write? There's no stories to be told. And in fact, if you were black, you wouldn't be able to write, because you would only be able to write black people of whatever, if you're male or female, or, you wouldn't be able to, you have to be able to write. You do have to do your research, and you have to know what you're talking about. Like Stephen Crane wrote Red Badge of Courage without ever having fought in a war, without ever having been part of Civil War, but it's considered pretty much the greatest book about the Civil War, the American Civil War.
That's true.
because he did tremendous amounts of research. He talked to so many people who had actually been in the war. And that's why he had the bent that he had on it and the take he had on it. Plus, being human, you can put yourself in mentally as we're creative people, we're imaginative. Well, we're all creative people. We're all creative in the way that we're creative, but we're creative that way. And we can put ourselves in the mindset of the people in that life. And because we're all human, we're all cousins. And that's been the difficulty is people don't have kind of forgotten that we're all actually related. Every single last one of us. There's not a single person on this planet that I'm not related to. You're all my family. I love you all. And I'm responsible for you as much as you're responsible for me. To the extent that we live these lives of separation is the extent that we're doing this improperly. So we're supposed to be connected. If you feel disconnected from other people, try to get connected. And yeah, our personalities get in the way sometimes, and other things get in the way, and socioeconomic conditions get in the way, and history gets in the way. I mean, there's a lot of things. I'm not Pollyanna. I'm not saying, oh, everything's perfect, because it isn't. And if anybody's going to stand up here and say, oh, there's no racism, well, you're an idiot. I'm sorry, I shouldn't call people idiots. My wife hates it when I say that. But but you're not paying attention. There is racism. There are people who do, who think of other people as being less than them, who dislike them because of the color of their skin. It's a real thing. And there are people who have been kept down because of the color of their skin. That is a true thing. That has to be addressed. It has to be changed. And it's still occurring, but it's also occurring to people, it occurs all over the world. It's not endemic to America.
Oh no, it's not an American thing.
No,
It's not. Trust me,
it's
I lived overseas. There's levels of,
yeah, yeah. There's some places where you can go. I mean, people don't recognize it because they haven't been other places. But boy, there are a lot worse places than America when it comes to race, and and separating people. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you have to have lived it, but you do have to do your research, and you really have to know it. Because we are, we're all related, and that's my.
right.
But anyway, yeah. Did that answer it, John? I hope.
Yes, they did. John, your cousin Jim Hope already answered that. Hey,
Hi, John.
the politically correct culture right now. What is your thought? Is that hindering your writing? Is that what's going on?
I think I like to look at it as good manners. People get so upset about PC things, but it doesn't hinder me, because if someone, what I don't cotton to is somebody telling me what I can say. If anybody's going to tell you what you can think and say, and is it going to try to take away your job because you disagree with them? Well, that's the kind of person who would probably have owned a slave, because they want somebody to kind of be their slave. They want other people to do what they think. So I disagree with that. But most people I find who are politically correct or kind of live by those things, they're usually people of pretty good will. They want people to be nice to each other, and they want people not to be rude. They want people not to pick on people because of the color of their skin, or because of physical traits that they don't have control over. There's a matter of manners. I think stand-up comedy lost its manners at one point, and so a lot of people are really upset because they're like, but I just want to not have manners. It's like, well, other people are telling you that you need to, that you need to be kind. On the other hand, I don't like the idea that somebody could lose their career because they're unkind, or lose their career because they said something somebody doesn't like. That's offensive to me. That's the offensive thing to me. But on the other hand, for me, you can't offend me. I'm impossible to offend, because if you say something horrible about me, I'm just going to not care about what you think. I still care about you, but I just don't care what you think. I'm not going to give you the power to offend me. I'm not going to give you the power to say, you're going to have a bad day now because I said something. It's like, I'm not going to have a bad day because you think something. I'm going to just go, well, okay, that's your opinion. I don't really care. That's yours. But you could make my life bad if you try to ruin me, try to get, help me, keep me from having a career.
Cancel me, yeah.
Yeah, and that's devastating. And that's a lot of 14-year-olds sitting at computers quietly on Twitter going, I'm going to destroy somebody's life. It's fun for me today. I'm going to go ruin a life. It's fun. It's just a game for them. They're not really paying attention to humans. And we got big corporations going, well, all those 14-year-olds said it. We got to fire this guy. It's like, well, you're not really paying attention. Well, they are paying attention. They're just going, it's easy. They're just taking the easy way. we'll fire him because these people said that. And it's like, come on. So I disagree with that part. I disagree with what some people call cancel culture. I'm not sure if I love the term, but I'm against people losing their careers or having their careers, thwarted because they disagree with other people, regardless of, but I do think that people need to be kinder to each other. I'm not against that, So the problem that the Christians a lot of time come into is that we often go, well, I don't like PC. And it's like, oh, you don't like people saying things that are not racist? Well, you do. You want people to not be racist, right?
Right.
And so it's like, you put yourself on the wrong side. You have to kind of understand what the impulse is, deal with the impulse toward PC, and then take away all the extra stuff that actually gets in the way of our humanity and gets in the way of our communication. You have to kind of like dig in. And so that's actually goes back to the beginning. It's like when we call it PC, we're labeling it. It's like, and then so we can negate it and we can say, oh, well, that's this and that's this compendium of reactions, and I'm against everybody who is PC because they're all these things. And it's not true. I know too many people who would be considered PC, but they're very nuanced in their perspectives. And so we have to get to know people as human beings and kind of not lump them into categories and kind of say, well, this specific thing that you're doing is unhelpful. So let's not do that. But this other thing that you want to accomplish is probably pretty good. So let's try to do that. And kind of, it's hard. That's the reason it doesn't happen. It's hard. It's hard to be nuanced in your intellect. It's hard to be careful in what you think and how you address life. It's hard. It's hard. And people don't want it hard. They want to kind of go, I don't like them because they're liberal. I don't like them because they're conservative. I'm done. I'm done thinking. I don't like the liberals. I don't like the conservatives. Bing, 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 bing. Well, I happen to like a lot of people of a lot of different ilks because they're humans and we're friends. So
That's awesome. Now, let's say someone's watching right now and they go, hey, I have a story in my head. I have a movie in my head. I have something that happened in my life that, man, I think it would be great. I have a story which I think it will be great to write. How do they start if they've never written before? What do you recommend?
Well, a writer writes. You just got to write. There's some good screenwriting books out there. I mean, I don't think that many. I don't really recommend a lot of screenwriting books. A lot of them are, it's like, here's 5 different ways that start with R that can get you started. It's like, oh, okay, great. You just sat down and you weren't in a room. I mean, a lot of people try to tell you how to be a TV writer and they've never been in a room or they only know one room and they wrote in one. And so, there's a lot of different ways. But I say, you got to write and see if you have a knack for it and try and keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it and go to school. Go to one of our schools. Come to film school. There's a lot of, I know the APU has some fantastic teachers. I know Biola.
Just take a class. Just take one class.
They have tremendous teachers at these schools, and they've done it and they know what they're doing. And so, yeah, I would recommend that everybody kind of look at their where they live and what they can do and take a class. It's worth it with somebody who's done it before or somebody, or hey, look, go on the web, get a script of a show that you really like and write a sample of that show. It's called a spec. You write a spec of an existing show. If you really like a show, get a sample of the script, figure out what the format is, get Final Draft or Screenwriter or one of those writing programs, Celtics, I think, and put it on your computer and just kind of look at how they do the story and watch a bunch of the episodes and see how they structure their story. And then write an episode and see if you have a knack for it. And then if you kind of, it seems pretty good, write another one of another episode of it's another series and then write your own original and just kind of, you build a portfolio. A lot of people say they want to do something and they never do it, but that's because they don't really want to do it. They want to be in the position to have done it. But see, to want to be a writer means you got to write. When somebody says, I wish I was a writer, well, then go write. I don't, that's a lot of hard work. Well, then you don't really want to be a writer because it is a lot of hard work. Lawrence Kasdan said, being a writer means you always have homework. Well, we do. And so if you always like having homework and you always like having something to do, then it's a great job. But if you don't, if the writing itself is a pain to you, it's a labor, it's just like, it doesn't come out naturally, well, it's probably not for you. So, so many people say, I want to be an actor, and then they don't go act. and they just go, what they really want is they want the fame of being an actor, or they want the position of being an actor, or they want the money of being an actor. They want the cars and the people, surrounding them of being an actor, but they don't really want the work of being an actor, because being an actor is work. You actually, there's a craft to it, and you have to develop, and you have to kind of really dive into that. And, to be a good actor, you have to do something. You have to do that, and the same thing with directing, and writing, very much so. And comedian. Come on, Nazareth. We know so many people who came to open mics and who said, I'm going to be a comic. And they had 5 minutes that they did for the next 10 years. They never wrote another joke. They always did the same things because they kind of wanted to pretend to be comics. And they're not comics. They say they're comedians because they have 5 to 10 minutes of material. They never worked the road. They never worked a venue. And it's like, okay, great. You get to say that. But you don't really want to do it because you don't really want to do what we do, which is right. It's not easy, that's right.
Which is a lot. You see a lot of people right now. Before it wasn't like everybody's a comedian / comedian. You know what? Carpenter / comedian, actor / comedian, and there's all these people. Like, where did they all come from? And all that.
They didn't come from anywhere. They're just. It's like it's not. They come from everywhere, and then they go, well, I'm going to go tell some jokes, and now I'm a comedian. It's like, yes, technically, if you stand on stage and tell jokes, you're a comedian, but it doesn't make you a comedian. It just, you're a comedian, I guess, while you're doing it. I don't know. It's like, it's a strange distinction, but it's one of those things where it's like, there's a lot of people who want something, but they don't want it. They don't want what it actually is. They want the outcome of it. That's true. Anybody can get rich, rob a bank, so many people want to be rich, but they don't really want to do what it takes, the hard work, the daily, and the risk, the tremendous, when people say to people who are wealthy, and I'm not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination, but when they say to people who are really wealthy, you say, well, just share your money with us. It's like, but you don't know the 20 to 22 hour days that person probably put in to get there if they didn't inherit it. And there are people who inherit it, but the 20, I know writing, I put in 24-hour days before. I put in, 7 days.
For 24 hours straight.
Oh, no. I've been on a show. Yeah, absolutely. Where we were in the writer's room for the whole day, all the way through. It's happened. I've also been on shows where for weeks on end, we didn't take a break. We worked every day, and our short days were 10 hours. Our long days were 16 to 18 hours, sometimes 20. I've worked 22 hours on some shows where that was a few nights that week where it was 22 hours. You slept for an hour a night. It's like that happens.
And how can you be creative when you're that tired or that?
It's hard, but it's coffee. They have something called coffee, Nazareth. It's fantastic. I don't know if you've heard of it, but But yeah, so we drink coffee, and we come in, and you have to take a break from that. You can't do that continually. There you go. See, that's not a cup. That's like 9 cups of coffee. That's the one thing. That's one of those I'm going to trick my doctor kind of things. When the doctor says, "Well, confine yourself to 1 cup," and it's like this big.
This big.
Yes, I'll just have the cup.
That's hard. See, that's great for everybody. Like if someone is listening, this is not talking about writing. We're talking life. When we talk about being a farmer and being a prospector and being a fisherman, that's talking about life. When we're talking about if you want something really bad enough, do you really want it, or you want the outcome? You're not willing to put the work in it. That's powerful. Now, what about someone who just wants to write a story about their life or a book? What do you say to them?
I say do it. I say here's the thing. This is great. First, outline it. Give yourself a chance. Don't just start writing and go, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. Outline it a little bit. Figure out a structure for yourself. It doesn't have to be a perfect structure. It doesn't have to be a structure that anybody else has done. You don't have to copy anything, but outline it. Give yourself some idea of where you're going with it. Figure out how it's going to end before you start, so you kind of know where the little thing's going. So give yourself a shot. Secondly, write it and rewrite it and rewrite it. Understand that writing is rewriting. The first time you put something down, it's not necessarily going to be perfect. Don't strive for perfection initially. Don't ever strive for perfection, because you're not going to get it. But what you are going to get is you're going to get better every time you rewrite, every time you stay. And don't rewrite as you're going along. Finish it all. do your outline, finish the whole thing. That's how I do it. At least some people have other strategies. But I say write it all out and then look at it, let it sit, and then come back and rewrite it and see where you think it could be better and where it could be, and just kind of dig in. It's that it is really every journey begins with one step, but it really, you have to step on dry ground. I mean, you don't, if it's a journey where you one step into the ocean, you're going to drown. So, put yourself on dry ground, put yourself in a place where you can actually get that journey started, write your outline, know where it's going, and then understand dry ground also in your mind. This is going to get better. I'm going to get better. I'm going to continue to get better. Don't judge your outcomes, and don't judge yourself, and don't worry about what other people are going to say about it. Just if it's in you and you really want to tell your story, tell it. And also, who says it has to be a book? It could be a short story. Who says it has to be a short story? It could be a poem. It could be a non-rhyming poem. It could be an epic poem. Do whatever, however, do it in a web series. However you tell the story best, tell that story. You don't have to do it a specific way. Do the thing that, lean into the thing that you are, that captures your specific and particular bent. And that's one of the things I love teaching people.
That's awesome. Okay, do you, like, let's say you're sitting and writing, you said sometimes you have 22 hours. Don't you have, like, for me personally, my brain is just like this nagging teenager. I don't want to do this right now. Can we play some games first? Can I play a game before we start writing? And then 2 minutes, can I get some coffee? Can we get coffee? My stomach, I'm hungry. Can we eat something? Then we can write. And the whole day is like you're trying to focus, and do you get that? How do you deal with
Yeah,
that?
all the time. I mean, that's normal. It's avoidance. And part of the reason I don't have as much output that isn't for money is that when it's for money, I got to finish it. When it's just for me, yeah, it's hard. But I mean, what I do is I always put the goal of money. I always go, I can sell this, or I'll try to sell this, And so that kind of keeps me motivated, because yeah, it's hard to sit and write things unless, unless it's just your fun kind of writing. Like I write poetry and stuff like that. I love doing it. It's really fun. It's really easy. I like it. I like verse and all these other things. It's terrific. But or little philosophical tracks, but they're short. I just write it and I just get it out of my head, and it's written out and I have it. And it's like, okay, terrific. I did that. I like that. But longer form, scripts and things like that. Yeah, everybody gets distracted. Well, not everybody. Stephen King apparently is able to sit down and write for 8 hours. Kurt Vonnegut, I think, did 4 hours a day. Some people are like, they're machines. Is it Guy de Maupassant, who would just sit and just like machine gun for like 2 or 3 hours, just put tremendous amounts of material out. Some people can do it. You have to find your way of writing and your style. Some people, can just churn it out, and some people it's more inspiration. But if you're going to make a living at it, you have to find a balance to where you're going to do it every day, where you're going to be disciplined enough to sit down and get it done. And if that means that you have a mug of coffee that you kind of sip as you go along, or you chew gum, please don't chew gum near me. I have misophonia. It bothers me.
Are you serious? You like John, my son?
Yeah,
we cannot chew gum next to him. Nobody. Yeah, he gets angry.
Yeah,
You're the same way.
Angry. It's angry. Yeah, there's actually a thing in my head. Yeah, it's not good. But if you chew gum or something, whatever you do that keeps you motivated. I mean, I know back in the day, a lot of writers used to smoke because it was just this thing. And it's like, I think Lillian Hellman talked about it specifically, why, the attachment to this thing. But mostly what it is it's a way to procrastinate while you're not procrastinating. It's a way to take your mind off this thing that is a labor of love. Writing is, writing in the moment. It's an interesting thing. When you write, you're not living, but you're writing about living. So it's actually antithetical to what we do as humans, because we live. So in those moments that you're recording a life, you're not actually living a life. And there's something in you that says, but I should be living a life. I should be doing these other things. But so there's a tension in there. But regardless, it's a matter of disciplining yourself if you want that outcome. And if you want to be this, then you have to do this, and you have to be this. It's an interesting thing. It's like if somebody wanted to be a coal miner and said, I want to be a coal miner, and they just never got into a mine and they never chipped away at the coal, then they don't really want to be a coal miner. I mean, in football,
Right.
they say, in the NFL, they say players cut themselves. You got to do work. You got to get in the gym. You got to do the stuff that you got to do. And, of course, steroids help. But the sorry, NFL, but we know it's true. At any rate, no, but I'm playing. But yeah, I mean, the NFL is, you got to do work, and there's plenty of people who want your job. So you get cut if you don't do your job. You know,
Right, right.
um,
That's true. It's funny when when I used to do tours with a tour with a tour bus and all that. The driver was always smoking because what, we finish the concert, you get in the bus at 10 at night, and then they drive till like 6 in the morning the next day. And the first complaint when we first toured was like, yeah, it can't be smoking on the bus. And then you think about it, you go, he said, that's the only, if you don't want to die, or if you want me to go in the ditch, that's the only thing that keeps you awake. And he had his whole
yeah,
box, so he wasn't bothering anybody in the
right,
back.
right.
But
It was for
it's
him.
true. Now,
Yeah.
where can people? Do you have classes online that people can sign up for? They can take to learn.
No, I don't. I don't teach online. I teach just at the universities.
Do they have online classes that you're teaching that they
Yeah,
can
they do. I
join?
mean, I think you have to be enrolled in the university, but you contact them and see about that. There's tremendous programs. I think we have a graduate program at well, the graduate programs at both Biola and at Azusa Pacific, and depending on your bent and the direction you want it, because they're different universities. They're both Christian universities. They both they have a similar and different mission, which I think is tremendous. And so you just kind of do your research on which university is better for you. I think they're both wonderful, and they both serve a completely different group of Christian folk. And so I think it's really wonderful. I mean, the way that they both have a mission, and
Yeah.
so that's great. And then I'm also at Chapman. I don't teach the graduates there, but I teach the undergrads there. But if you want to do that, you should look into enrolling in one of those universities. I know that the graduate programs are not super expensive, particularly if you want to get a master's degree. It's not bad. It's actually pretty decent. If you want
Excellent.
if you want to get involved in this,
Yeah.
sure.
Now, do you have any work that out there? Someone want to read your poems, your short stories, your anything else?
I Yeah, my stuff I write for the computers in 100 years. They're gonna love it. But I'm not really writing for people now so much. That stuff. It's not really that. Well, I mean, I'll publish it eventually, probably, but people will go, it's kind of abstruse,
That's fine.
and Dean Batali, by the way, keeps on texting me.
I love
So
Dean. I
Dean's
love Dean.
fantastic.
I
Dean's
love
Dean's
Dean.
wonderful, and so he keeps on texting me and rouse. I keep on looking down. It's like another insult. So it's fantastic. He's great. He's
It's
fantastic. But
awesome.
yeah,
Jim, thank you so
yeah.
much for your
No, thank
time.
you.
Really, that was a lot of information, a lot of helpful
Good.
stuff, a lot of wisdom and knowledge in politics, in life, in writing, and all that. Thank you so much for everything.
Sure. I hope I
I
was helpful.
appreciate.
Yeah, sure,
You were
man.
very helpful, and we appreciate and we love you. And if the people want to get a hold of you, where can they go?
I'll probably at the
JimHunt.com.
mall. I'll be walking around the mall just looking for Sephora for my wife. Where is that? Where's Sephora? Is what I'm. No, I don't really. It's hard. I'm not really out there to be. I'm not. I'm just a guy.
But
So
you
they'll
do stand
contact
up.
you if
So
they
if
need.
people want to hire you for stand up, they can.
Yeah, I don't even know how to do that anymore. I just work with friends. If they say, "Hey, you want to come do stand up?" I go, "Yeah, sure." I'm not really trolling for work or anything like that. That way.
That's
I
awesome.
mean, it's not. It's. Yeah, I respect you guys tremendously who are still out there like hustling and making it work and putting on shows. I mean, you put on shows with thousands. I mean, it's amazing. It's just wonderful, and I think what you do is tremendous and really
Thank you,
great.
bro.
You're touching so
I
many lives.
appreciate it.
I'm
I
very proud.
appreciate it.
I'm very
Thank
proud
you.
of your success.
I'm
I
proud
really
of
am.
you and what
Yeah,
you do. And hey, maybe we'll do a sitcom one day. We
that'd
never
be
know.
lovely. I would love it. I love your story. I always have. So you know that.
Well, I appreciate that, Jim. Thank you
Absolutely.
so much
See you
for.
later, my
I
friend. Thank
appreciate.
you for
Love
having
you,
me.
man. Thank you so
Absolutely. Love you
much.
too. Okay.
Bye.
Bye bye.